What if we could learn from outstanding leaders in business, sports, and education from some of the best voices in corporate America? Lighting the Path is a series of interviews with industry leaders whose stories highlight strategies that build purpose-driven cultures, engage and retain top talent, develop drivers that create high-performance teams, and connect people to the vision of your company. Join us to hear from game-changing, talented leaders whose paths make a difference at work and at home.
I've been on this journey of trying to understand the definition of the word culture because it's such a big word that's being used by people. It's become a buzzword. So I started talking to C-suite people to say, what's the definition of culture? And what was interesting when I put all the answers together, where I landed was it's two things within an organization. It's how the people within an organization act and what they believe, how they think, what they believe in, and how they act. And today, I met Matt, who is I call him a believe expert because he is so focused on the mindset of belief. Matter of fact, his new book just launched last week. It's built on belief: why cultures of commitment are the competitive advantage. And we're going to have fun talking, Matt, about this whole concept of how belief drives commitment versus compliance. It's a
Love
common
it.
theme that I have along those lines. And so, yeah, what's so cool is Matt Marcotte is a founder of a consulting firm that principal with M2 Collaborative. He's a MBA professor at Boston College. He's a Columbia University executive coach. In the retail world, he's worked for, when I asked him to give me some of the name brands he worked with, I had to stop him because of I mean, we're talking about global names like Salesforce, like Apple. And one of my favorites, Bergdorf Goodman,
Right.
because I've been in that store with my wife. And thank God I didn't contribute to your paycheck, Matt. I got out of
Doesn't
there.
ask if
So
you stopped or you just kept going,
I
right?
got out of there, man. I got out of there. So, Matt, welcome to the show.
Thank you. So good to be here with you, Mike. Appreciate it.
Yeah, I want to dive. I want to start with your book because that's just front of mind for you.
Sure.
Where did the focus in your mission in this stage in your journey in your career, this focus on the power of belief, how did that manifest itself?
Yeah, it's interesting when I sat down, I knew I wanted to write a book, and I was thinking about how do I share my point of view on how you lead organizations, how you build and scale organizations. Because as you said, I've been lucky enough to work for some pretty amazing brands and some pretty incredible um, inflection points in their journey as well. And so as I was putting the book together, there are frameworks that are in the book, and that's where I thought I was starting. But I had this moment where I realized or the question I asked myself, I should say, was what makes my frameworks different than anybody else's, right? Everybody has frameworks. And what I realized was that the reason that I was successful in the strategies that we had put together was that every person that worked with me believed the exact same thing I did. They were committed to the mission, they were committed to the vision, they were committed to the strategy, they understood their part in it, they had agency, all these things. And so very quickly, I was like, let me pivot to this is really the secret sauce, which is how do you transform belief into a culture of commitment versus compliance?
Yeah, I love that. I spent a lot of time with Patrick Lencioni's Five Behaviors of a Cohesive
Yes,
Team model,
that's why.
and it talks specifically, of course, about you cannot get commitment without getting buy-in, and
Yes,
you don't get buy-in without clarity, and that's where
correct.
belief comes into play.
Yeah, and also as you to refer back to that because I agree with you. I think it's a great framework, and that idea of commitment is a product of conflict, and
Of
conflict is a
course,
product of trust. And conflict is, to your point, probably one of the most important things, which is giving people the opportunity to have agency and a voice and a part in the journey and the creation, even if that comes at the kind of idea of challenge, right? And
hmm
when people feel heard, they're more apt to have skin in the game. And I think that's a huge differentiator between commitment and compliance.
yeah, very much so. In today's time, The research I'm doing, I'm doing a program more with a group of legal administrators, the people who run the big law firms here in Houston. And at the start of the program, I'm going to report to them that the word that is most used in today's time to describe our current atmosphere,
Mm,
both business-wise and socially, the word is uncertainty.
yes.
Right. And so when I look at this, to me, your book, this whole concept of belief, I think is the secret sauce. It's the magic elixir
Yes.
that in today's time that you need if you're fighting, if you and the people that you're leading are you're trying to help them fight this current that we're in.
Yeah.
To focus on this whole concept of belief. So much so that I thought about, from an introduction standpoint, is not to list your pedigree. I thought about if you flip open your book to the very first, there's a quote right at the very beginning. I want to get this specifically. It says, "When your people believe and what you believe in, and when they know that they have your understanding and support, the
Mm,
sky is the limit."
yes.
Right. And that's I mean to be the champion or the shepherd of that thought and helping people look on those lines, it moves us out of just getting by
Yes.
to really raising our level of performance, doesn't it?
Oh, absolutely. And also to your point about the difference between getting by, it's a long-term investment. When you have people that are kind of rowing in the same direction with you, not only is the sky the limit, but you can create long-lasting results. And
Hmm.
and that to me is what's amazing. One of the things, and you can appreciate this, I'm sure, one of the things I think that is so unfortunate is that there's myth that the leader has to do it all or have all the answers or be the single source of truth for their organizations. And the opposite is actually true. What leaders need to do is create environments and cultures where people can bring their best. Because what I have found is the people that work with me always have better ideas. They always have
Hmm.
better solutions. They always have ways of thinking about things because they have diversity of thought and background and experience. And if you're not leveraging that, if you're not mining that, if you're not giving people a stage or a platform to be able to add to what you're doing, then you're missing out. And when you can get people to do those things, you're creating futures that you didn't even dream of on your own.
Yeah, when you talk about the this myth, I'm kind of curious, because of your experience. You've got both
Yeah.
this awesome academic background, but more important, you've got boots in the sand
Yep.
experience with some large global organizations. Is is the expectation that the leader is has to be the person capable of everything, or is it a self story that the leader tells themselves that this is the expectation I'm putting on me. Other people may not have, but I'm putting this on me that my role as a leader, my value as a leader is to be the do guy, as opposed to creating this culture that you talk about that where I release it to the people around me and let them be the hero, let them come up with a thought, let them do stuff, which
Yeah.
shifts a value proposition that some people are really uncomfortable with.
I mean, here's my thought, and I'd love to get your perspective on this as well because you have such a large purview as well. I think it's all of the above. I mean, I think I don't think there's one silver bullet as to why people do that, but I think in cultures, in the traditional cultures, you ever hear the definition of ego, which is being right, looking good, being in control. And
Mm,
those are the killers of really doing anything amazing. But that is a construct that is created through the idea of, what I refer to as a hero culture. And you see this in a lot of organizations where it's really about you. And what I think a lot of leaders don't actually understand or haven't understood is that my success is predicated on my people's success. And so the way to actually deliver the best results is to make sure everyone that works with you is successful. And
hmm.
so, there's that term servant leadership, and we can argue or discuss what that means or how it's been interpreted.
It's another one thing like quality. It's been out there for a while. So what
It's
does it
been out,
mean today?
and what does it even mean, right?
That's
But
right.
the idea of actually unleashing everybody else's potential to me is such a competitive advantage. But I think it's hard, first of all. I think it's really hard to be able to lead people versus manage process because
Hmm.
people are messy and people are individuals, and people come with their own ideas and thoughts and all those different things. And so the work of leadership is to really be able to get into that level of understanding and then unleashing person by person by person, or organization by organization by organization. And that's hard. So I think it's a multitude of different reasons, but I'd love to get your perspective. Why do you think people feel that way?
Well, I think part of the challenge comes into is I spent a lot of time with the Wiley's Everything Disc
Oh
behavioral
yeah.
assessment.
Yeah.
Okay. And so we found it, whether it's Myers-Briggs or Personalysis or Berkman or whoever, they all work off of this quadrant process. And then I find that people who are very driven, that dominant style, they like control because it's not from an ego standpoint, since you bring that word up. It just has to do with that if I'm in control, I can get the results. If I'm in control, I can make it happen. There's a
Yeah.
wiring that goes with that. All right.
Yes. And it's interesting. I agree with that 100%. What I will do with coaching clients of mine and organizations is I will challenge the definition of the word control.
Yeah.
Because to me, when you're the conductor of the orchestra, you're still in control, but you're not
Hmm.
playing every instrument.
Right.
You don't have all the instruments, the sound isn't the same.
Hmm.
So people have to redefine what control actually means.
You bet.
What you're referring to, the way I interpret it, is control me. It's about me again.
That's right. It's an
Versus
internal look.
controlling the overarching environment that allows everybody to be amazing. And that's a
You bet.
very different altitude of control.
Yeah, very much so. Because what takes place is that as a leader, it's the book that's over my shoulder, Equipped to Lead, is based upon emotional intelligence. One of my definitions of emotional
Yes.
intelligence: can I look at life through somebody else's eyes?
Yes.
If I can do that, that's a high EQ score. And I love that because of this book your premise on belief is as a leader. And I'm curious about this, is that do I look for somebody who has the same belief that I have, or do I have to develop my communication skills to be able to portray my belief in a manner that I get buy-in from somebody
Yes.
because it affects their value system?
Yes. So, there's a framework that I have in the book, which I've lived by for a very, very long time: heart, head, hands. And it means what you feel, what you think, what you do. Now, if you actually Google those words in that order, the search results will give it back to you with the first two words reversed, usually, because the more accepted construct is head, heart, hands, which is intellectually telling you what my strategy is, hoping you actually get emotionally attached to it, and then do something.
Hmm.
That's not how humans are wired. Humans are actually wired to feel first, then to make sense of that feeling intellectually and figure out what to do with it, and then do something. So to
Hmm.
answer your question in context of that framework, I believe that part of what you always want to do is put people in choice. You want to give them complete clarity around what the environment is, what the mission, the North Star, what you're solving for. And you do that from wouldn't it be great if we were able to do this, which is more of an emotional kind of, Martin Luther King Jr. said, I have a dream, not I have a plan. That's Simon Sinek quote from his TED Talk, which I love.
Hmm.
This idea of helping people to have clarity around what they're in for, what the ultimate goal is. And then people can say, that's not me. Or, oh my God, that's totally me. Now what do we do? Right? So to
Hmm.
get people either interested and curious, or to have that feeling where it's like, this just doesn't feel like me, I'm not really interested, is wonderful, because then hopefully they can opt out on their own.
That's right. Yeah, very much so, because this whole concept of leadership, which you're making me think about, is that leadership is about choice.
Yes.
We have a tendency as leaders sometimes to unfortunately focus on what choices am I making, which choices do I need to make. And what I found in my years of experience in executive search is that from a cultural standpoint, a business culture, a business climate, I'm shocked at how many people in the hiring process think that people should feel lucky that they've got a job.
Did that still happen?
Unfortunately, it's the wildest thing. Luckily it's not uh, a purveying, overarching time frame. But even in today's time, even because what happens is, remember when COVID hit, unemployment bounced up to, what is it, 19%? 14, 19%, like
Yep.
boom.
Yep.
What happened was is there's a fictitious image in the marketplace of all the people that were available. Unfortunately, it only lasted about 75 days. And
Mm.
then if you look at the bell curve, within 90 days, it dropped all the way back down to 6%. But some people got locked into this thing. Where are all the people? Where are all the people? Where are all the people?
Yeah.
Yeah, and I love this concept about but belief is both it's an igniter and an attractor. And
Yes.
because of that is what I spent a lot of time talking about is the atmosphere that we're in is not the great resignation. It was a bad label that was put on things. People didn't resign and move up to California. You're not in California, right? No, you're on the East Coast.
No,
Good.
I'm not.
Okay. If there's somebody from California, I apologize. But they didn't move to California, the mountains, to go do yoga. What happened was there was a reset that took place. And people started looking at, am I working for the boss that I want to work for, in the job that I want to work in, with the company that I believe there's an alignment,
Yep.
right? And there's a reset that took place. And what's ironic is that you would think that it had kind of tapered off. And what we're finding out is Gallup and Sharm just did a survey they do every year, but it shows that that middle tier of people from a disengagement standpoint grew in the last year more than it did when COVID was going on. So I mean, so we have this thing where people are still in this reset mindset right now.
Yes. Yes. And it's
Yeah.
interesting generationally. And listen, I believe every person wants to feel fulfilled and connected and valued. But it's interesting if you look at like millennials, Gen Z, they are much more vocal about the need for purpose, meaning, and the why.
Mm-hmm.
And so much of what I talk about in the book is centered around the why and meaning and purpose. So I don't know if those generations are actually any different as far as what their needs are. I think they're just more confident saying, this is what I want.
Yeah. You said something I love, Matt. It talks about the importance of somebody feeling valued. But that list that you put down, okay, is what happens is if you give me flexibility, if you give me a voice at the table, that this Gen Z, Gen X, whatever you're talking about, uh, that's how they feel valued.
Yes.
That's how they feel valued. And that hasn't changed. What happens is the boomers, the way we felt valued was, are we contributing?
Yes.
Okay,
Right.
that's our value system. Right.
Right.
But at the
Well,
end of the day, that's the driver.
yes. And it was interesting, just a quick example to your point, like this is what I probably, I don't know, 10 years ago now, even longer. When I went to Apple and I was running all of retail for North America, one of the things that was very much in the ethos and the DNA of Apple was it's a creative outlet, right? So you've got people who are making movies and creatives that are photographers and musicians and all of these things that you use Apple products for. It's a part of how we talked about the brand. And we had them as employees because who better than people who use the products to then be advocates for the brand? Now, some of these people were still active in the other parts of their lives. And so, what we tried to do, to your point about adding value or to really kind of give people a voice and show them we supported them, was where it was possible. Now, we had stores that had 200 employees, 300 employees, so we could do this probably more than a lot of different brands. But we would allow someone to go on tour for 2 weeks if you were a
Mm.
musician and you'd come back with your job. So we felt that it was accretive, it was additive to the brand to have people who not only loved the brand, used the brand, but were also just absolute advocates because we had a partnership, right? Like we were in this together. And I would say the people when you're committed, you don't work for a brand, you're part of a brand.
Yeah. So what
From
did you
this
do
to
at
this.
Yeah, when you're saying this about Apple, I'm having flashbacks to my experience in an Apple store because I'm a Mac guy, right?
Yep, thank you.
So as I walk in, I wasn't, when I worked for a corporation, I had my Dell boxes and everything. But when I became,
Yep.
yes, I was able to go, okay, I'm Mac all the way across the board. And so I've had a lot of experience in the Mac store, and I've also had a lot of experience with Apple Care. And what I'm I'm fascinated by is the people I talk to are soft-spoken zealots, not about the company, but about what they do. Their
Mm-hmm.
desire to solve problems, the
Yes.
desire to move me up the chain if they can, to escalate things, the
Yes.
desire to understand. That's a belief system.
Yes.
All right. And so within the retail part that you were in charge of, was there something that you
Yes.
intentionally did to foster
Yep.
that?
Yep. So it's interesting, and I write about this in the book, so I won't go into the full kind of part of the story because it's a longer one. But essentially, we were in explosive growth mode at the time that I was there. We're opening like 50 stores a year. We went from 10,000 employees in the field in North America to 25,000 in about a year and a half to 2 years. So you're adding a lot of human capital. And what we realized was, A, even if we wanted to, you couldn't find enough people that actually had the expertise around Mac products just because it was still relatively small. Can't believe it now, but at that time, it was in the world of computers and whatnot. Anyway, we went back to who we are, what we believed, what our values were, what we wanted our customer experience to be, and the relationship we wanted to have with our customers. And we looked for people who loved the brand, that wanted to be in service, and wanted to help others love the brand as much as they did. Now, that's a simplification, but that was essentially the guiding principle. So it went things like, for example, we didn't work on commission because we didn't want people selling
Hmm.
to customers to get money, right? So we actually did not do that. So things that are very specific like that, as well as the amount of training that we would give, the type of training, the way we trained, so that people had confidence through competence. But to your point, the approach was to help people explore and unleash their creativity through the Apple products that they purchased. So it was a different way of thinking about it, but we realized if we hadn't been super clear about who we were, what our culture was, what our DNA was, and how that gets expressed in our employees, adding 15,000 people would have fundamentally changed the company.
Yeah, totally. And so let's do this. Let's take that example. Let's move it downstream
Sure.
to more of an entrepreneurial, environment where somebody's working for somebody who is not an Apple brand, a Salesforce brand, a
Yeah.
Bergdorf Goodman brand. Thanks for joining us today on Lighting the Path, Strategies for Tomorrow's Leaders. If anything in this podcast speaks to you, if I've challenged you, or if you want to spend time digging into this subject a little deeper, or if you disagree with me, reach out. My contact information is on our website, lightingthepath.net, or email me at mike@mikelejeune.com. Also, look for me on LinkedIn. I'd love to connect our networks. Keep lighting the path for those who choose to follow you. It's more than a responsibility, it's an honor.